Today we've got a crazy story of revenge of sleeping with your stepmom. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, my father got what he deserved. My mom always taught me to be kind. She was always one of those mums who went, "If you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all." She really was a sweetheart, even though a lot of people took her for granted because of it. She had been through a lot. Growing up, she had a father who was physically abusive to her siblings, and her mother, but especially to her. She had the scars to prove it. She never really had a lot of friends in school, and she constantly got bullied. When she was in the 10th grade, her father got arrested for dealing drugs and went on to spend the next 12 years in prison. Since her father was the breadwinner and they could barely survive without him, she had to start working to support her mother. At a point in time, she considered not going to college so she could stay home and help the family. However, she got a scholarship and decided to go on to school. She graduated, got a job, and things finally started looking up for her, till she met my father. My mom loves my dad, still does. After everything, I can see it in her eyes when she talks about him. My father was probably the first and only man she's ever been in love with. They met at a friend's birthday party. He seemed pretty interested in her and was making all the moves. For weeks after, he begged her to go on one date with him. At the time, my mom was skeptical. She really hadn't had a lot of success dating and was just looking to focus on her career, but my dad was stubborn. Eventually, she agreed to that first date, and soon that date led to other dates, and in a year, he went down on one knee and asked my mom to stay with him forever. They got married in a quaint little chapel in June. Things started to go south a couple of years into the marriage. You see, my dad really wasn't one for monogamy. My mom found this out the hard way. She tried as much as she could to keep him from constantly looking outside the home. But like I said before, my dad is stubborn. So my mom did something I honestly feel she flopped with. She decided to act like she didn't know he was sleeping around. To her, so long as he comes back home, she could live with the pain he was constantly causing. One day, he didn't come back home. This was while she was just over 5 months into the pregnancy that would turn out to be me. She got the divorce papers 3 months later. It stressed her so much, she went into premature labor. Since then, it's just been her and me. However, even with everything that she'd been through, my mom somehow managed to remain a good person. She was kind, she was sweet, and she was the kind of person to help first, sometimes even to her detriment. She really is special. I've only ever seen my father a handful of times. Every time I see him, he has a different woman in his arms. My mom always let me know that there was an option to see my dad since when I was young. She did let me know that he might not be who I'd like him to be though. I guess she just wanted to make sure that I didn't start to view the man as some kind of hero, so I won't be too upset when he disappointed me. Still, I clung on to the hope that perhaps I could actually build a solid relationship with the man. Perhaps he'd be a better father than he was a husband. He wasn't. Honestly, I don't see what my mom ever saw in him. I mean, I'm sure he can turn on the charm when he needs to, but right from the start, I knew that he wasn't the kind of person to stick around. How, you ask? Well, the first time I stayed with him all day, he actually abandoned me. Let me tell you the story. I was 10 years old and I'd been pestering my mom to let me spend time alone with my dad. We had seen him before, but it was usually very briefly, like lunch or to see a movie. I wanted more, and so I started to ask incessantly. It got to the point where I actually assumed that my mom had some other motive for not trusting me with my dad. Perhaps she was worried I'd prefer him to her and want to live with him or something. Whatever it was, I was starting to get a little pissed. However, one day, my mom said she had managed to make plans with him and I'd spend the whole day with my dad. I was excited. My mom dropped me off early on Saturday and said she'd be over to come pick me up at 7 p.m. The lady who opened the door was new, and I didn't know whether she was another one of my dad's girlfriends or not. The moment my dad saw me though, he sighed deeply like I was some inconvenience he really didn't want to have to deal with. After about an hour of watching TV with him, I asked if he had any plans for us for the day. I figured we'd probably go out to like the park or something. Staying at home watching TV didn't seem enough for my dad and I's special day together. He said that he did have plans for us, but that he needed to go get something at the store and drop off his girlfriend first though. When I offered to follow him, he said there was no need and he'd be right back. So I waited in the house while he went out. After a while, I started to explore a bit, but even that got boring too. I started to get a little worried. Maybe my dad had gotten into an accident and that was why he wasn't back home. Or maybe he had been kidnapped. Thoughts started running through my mind. I didn't have a cell phone at the time, but there was a house phone and I tried calling his number on it, but it all went to voicemail. I considered calling my mom, but I decided against it. Soon it was evening. I felt so awful that I actually started to cry. I'd been left at home alone all day by my dad. I was almost certain that something had happened to him, so I did the one thing that was left to do. I called 911. The dispatcher told me to try to calm down and that they were sending a police over to the house. After hanging up, I called my mom. When the police officers arrived, they were really nice to me and asked questions kindly. One of them even got me a donut to eat. My mom was really worried when she got there. The police then moved from talking to me to questioning her to know if she had any idea where my dad could be. And just then, he actually drove in. He claimed to have forgotten that I was over at his that day and just went on with doing other things. My mom was furious and the police officers were already discussing child endangerment. I was honestly past the point of even listening. Hearing my dad admit that he had completely forgotten about me on that one day that we were supposed to spend together hurt me to my core. I just couldn't deal with it and just ran to my mom's car and wept. I don't remember much else about that day. All I remember is waking up the next morning. My mom came into my room with breakfast and spoke to me about my dad. She tried to get me to forgive my dad, but my mind was already made up. To me, he was irredeemable. After that incident, I carried on with my life without my father. It didn't even hurt in any way that I didn't get as little as an apology from him. In a way, his actions that day helped me save from a ton of stress. Imagine if my mom hadn't let me go. I'd have thought that she was the problem and she was only trying to keep me away from my father. I was glad that I actually got to see him for who he really was. For the rest of my childhood, I ignored him as much as I possibly could. Soon, I had graduated from high school, went to college, got an economics degree, and then I went for my master's. The entire time I had my mom and a few good friends with me. After getting my master's, I decided to go into academia and started lecturing at a local college. Work was fulfilling and I felt a sense of joy and peace. I always made time for my mother and I went over quite often. Honestly, I'm pretty sure the reason I haven't starved to death yet is because of the tons of food my mom insists on giving me as I leave her house. Life was good. I was happy. Nothing could possibly ruin it, right? Wrong. My dad decided that this was the time he'd finally show up in my life. It all started with rumors that my dad was constantly talking about how he was so proud of me, which I honestly doubted but didn't mind, and how he was a big influence into becoming the man that I'd become, despite my mom's efforts to keep me away from him. I was very tempted to tell those I heard this from how much of a deadbeat my father was, but I decided against it. They were just words after all, and literally anyone who really knew me knew that my father was lying. But then, suddenly they weren't just words. He was actually showing up at my work and trying to talk to me. When I told him I wasn't interested in talking to him, he started stalking me and my girlfriend, who also happened to be a lecturer at the same college I worked at. It was really annoying, and I was tempted more than just a few times to report him to the police. When it got to the point where I felt I couldn't handle it anymore, I actually went over to see my mom about it. She, as always, insisted that I not do anything rash. He was, after all, still my father. I felt a little upset that she was defending him after all this time and all he had done to us both. I left there a little annoyed with my mom. My mom may have tried to calm me down, but it turns out that she was also a bit upset about it all, because it turns out that as I left her house that afternoon, she went right over to my dad's to talk to him about his conduct. She had confronted him about abandoning us and constantly choosing other people over us. Now, when it was convenient, he wanted to not only claim me but make her seem like a bad person. She told him she would not stand for it, and if he continued to stalk or harass me, she'd make me get a restraining order against him. My father's reaction was nothing she expected. At first, he called her all sorts of colorful names and all, but then as she turned to leave, he grabbed her by the arm. When she told him to let go of her, he slapped her. He actually slapped her. She called me crying and I was ready to rush over immediately to beat him up. However, like always, she told me it wasn't worth it and to let it go. I tried to let it go. I really did, but with every day, guilt from letting him assault my mother and getting away with it consumed me. All her life, my mom had been nothing but good. Why was this the reward she got? Why was it that good people always got a lot of crap and no justice? Well, I decided I knew that if I went to the police, my mom would not only insist on not pressing charges, she might actually deny the whole thing. So I knew that there was no way I was going to get justice the legal way. If my mom was going to get any bit of justice, it was going to come directly from me. I knew I needed to be careful, so whatever I did to him could not be directly traced back to me. I decided that the best time to execute my plan will be at night. I had to be stealthy, and I also had to make sure I didn't cause anyone physical harm, so I planned and plotted. I knew by checking through his Facebook posts that my dad had planned to travel to Vegas for a weekend. That was my window to strike. Earlier on in the day that I was going to get revenge, I contacted my lawyer to request a restraining order against my father. We also discussed whether or not I could bring up a case of slander against him. Later that night, I snuck over to his house, and with some gasoline that I had hid in his trash the previous night, I set fire to his house. It made me feel good seeing the flames lick at the house, but I couldn't stay for long. I immediately escaped and went back to my place. I made sure to get rid of every probable piece of evidence on me, including the clothes I wore that night. The next day, I saw on the news that the fire had razed a good portion of the house. Not so much that the whole house was gone, but it did do a good amount of damage before the fire services got there. My father was heartbroken. He even had to leave Vegas early to come back home. The hardest part of it all was constantly expecting the police to figure out what had happened and come for me, but they never did. The investigations determined that it was a freak accident. The best part of all? My father's house wasn't insured. He'd have to pay for all the damages himself. Till this day, no one knows that I was responsible for the burning of my dad's house. Not even my mom. Also, my threat of a restraining order was enough to keep him away from my mom and I. I haven't heard from him since. So, although I understand crimes of passion happening when people like your mom get hurt by somebody, I don't think OP would be able to get away with what they did here, and I think considering immediately after their house catching fire, OP files for a restraining order, they're very lucky they didn't get accused legally of anything here. Because to be honest, it kinda looks suspicious, right? That said, our next story is, I slept with my stepmom to get back at my dad. I think my dad was secretly happy when my mom died. No, I don't think he was happy. I know for a fact that the dude probably leaped for joy in their bedroom when she died. I knew he wanted that to happen and had probably been waiting for it to happen. From what I was told, my parents' marriage was the talk of the town and maybe even the country. Mommy was a rich heiress when Daddy married her, and the world did not shut up about how Daddy must have married her for her money. Mommy's father, my grandfather, who had moved his business into the country and bought citizenship for his family, died at the age of 60. Mommy was the oldest, so she stepped into his shoes to take care of the family business. Being a woman and a young, experienced one at that, she spent years trying to prove to everyone that she was the competent person for that role. In doing that, she overworked herself and never had time to make friends or date anyone. She was always in the office trying to build up the family business and make something of her dad's legacy. Her brothers and mom were not so happy about her decision. They had wished that she would sell off their shares to the company and share the money amongst themselves, but Mommy was insistent on ensuring that her dad's legacy lived on. Luckily, she succeeded. She took the business from being a tiny deal to being a big deal. Eventually, her mom and brothers came around, and so did everyone in the company. She soon became a big name and was giving speeches here and there. She managed to earn the respect of everyone, and people looked up to her. Mommy was beautiful and successful, but even at 35, she had barely been in a relationship. All the men around her were intimidated by her, and the ones who came, she barely had time for them. By the time she was 40, people started to make retorts about her singleness, especially her mom, who was an old-fashioned woman and believed that a woman's life was incomplete without a husband and children. Her two brothers were married and already had children, but she didn't even have a boyfriend. At 42, she met someone. It was my dad. He was a banker who had just graduated from college. He was smart and hardworking. She saw that he would make a good staff in the finance department, so she stole him from where he worked and employed him. They soon became friends, and my dad made passes at her. She waved him off and refused his advances many times, but she was getting older, the pressure was getting worse, and she was meeting men who walked on eggshells around her. At some point, she decided that it would be best to go out with my dad and see where things would lead. My dad is from a poor family. He and his family grew up in a vineyard where his dad worked as a farm assistant to the owner, and his mom was their maid. He was very brilliant and did so well in school that his dad's employer took note of it and offered to sponsor his college education. One thing that's notable about my dad is how he keeps seeking ways to climb up and become richer. I don't blame him though. His family lived in poverty and he was always around wealth, from going to work with his mother, and never had access to it. Despite my dad's background, he was never intimidated by mommy, probably because he knew she wanted someone who wasn't insecure about how rich she was. He probably wanted to marry rich too. He never gave up on her, even on the many occasions when she was unsure about their relationship because of the age difference. As mommy grew, she decided to stop being so conscious and give him a chance. They dated for some months and he proposed after. Everyone was against their marriage, even her mother, who had been bothering her about getting married. She didn't understand why she was choosing to get married to a man who was nearly 2 decades younger than her. Mommy was a stubborn woman. She did whatever she wanted and she wanted my dad, so they got married privately. Despite the quiet wedding, the news got out and everyone called my dad a gold digger. They soon shut up when they saw that the two of them made a formidable team, and when it became obvious that my dad really did like her. He showed her love publicly and spoke glowingly about her. He praised her intelligence, her beauty, and he also contributed significantly to the growth of the business. Nobody could say that his fast promotions were because his wife was in charge. After all, he was brilliant and gave the business his all. At some point, I think people agreed that even if he was married to my mom to dig her gold, he had at least contributed significantly to her life too. From what my grandmother told me, Dad was not ready for a child when she had me. He had told her that he didn't want a child, but she stubbornly insisted. She was 45 and wasn't getting younger, so she wasn't going to let him stop her. When she got pregnant, she had assured him that she was on contraceptives. Grandma said my dad resented mommy for playing him like that. He even asked her to end the pregnancy, but of course, she refused. That was the beginning of their problems. Grandma told me that my dad only got mad because he didn't want anything permanent from mom, and the child was permanent. She said she suspected that he just wanted to have been married to her for a long time, enough to be able to get something after divorcing her. After mom had me, my dad started cheating on her, but I guess mommy didn't care. As long as his infidelity was not public enough for it to cause her any kind of embarrassment. As a teenager, I heard my dad threaten to divorce my mom many times. She would fall to her knees and beg him not to leave her. It didn't help that she had been diagnosed with a terminal illness and it was eating her. Her illness, unfaithful husband, and sexual starvation. Yes, I know for a fact that my dad stopped hooking up with my mom long before she died, and don't ask me how I know that. When mom eventually died, Dad got very wild. He brought women to the house all the time. It was torture, especially since I was still trying to get over the painful death of my mom. The sick thing was that everyone openly or quietly supported him, even my maternal grandma. She said on many occasions that it was only normal for my dad to explore, since my mom stole his youth from him. It was clear that my dad was trying to compensate for having been with mom for so long. He tried very hard to renew his image to the public. He even agreed to be on a show where women competed for his attention. It was sick. I had to move in temporarily with my grandmother, but before she died too, she would ask me to return home so I could make sure everything my mother left me was in good condition. My mother had left me the mansion we lived in, while my dad and I were to equally split the shares we had in the company. I was, however, not to show up as a shareholder until I was 21. My grandmother wanted me to be present in the house and the business so my dad wouldn't cheat me out of my inheritance. It was not news that my dad and I did not have a good relationship, not that it was not to be expected. I mean, the man didn't even want me. Weirdly, my dad always sort of saw me as his competitor. Sometimes I believed he was jealous of me, but I used to wave it off and think I was being silly. Of course, now I understand that he was indeed jealous of me. You see, my dad was a very attractive young man, and I looked just like him. I suspect that he wished he was in my shows. He wished he had an easy childhood like the one that I did, and since he had the looks, he thought that the only reason he wasn't the ladies' man that I am was because he didn't grow up having any money. That's right, the ladies love me, and hey, why not? I was in business school when my dad remarried. He had a huge destination wedding and got married to a 23-year-old woman. It seemed he was doing everything that was the opposite of what he did with my mother, probably to spite me or just to compensate for the times he believed he lost. He would often say that he wasted his youth on my mother. He also knew that I hated that he never honored her even after her death, and I hated that he brought all those women home. He wanted me out of the mansion very badly, but I was never going to leave. I even joked to my cousin that if I should get married, my wife was going to have to move into the mansion with me. Of course, I didn't attend their loud wedding, so I didn't meet my stepmother until 7 months after their wedding. It felt so strange to refer to her as my stepmother because she was very young and only a year older than me. The competition from my dad got worse when I resumed at the company and naturally attracted lots of women. Women wanted to be around me, and it made sense. I was young, very handsome, and I had money and an education too. Unlike my dad though, I was not out to bed with every woman. I mean, I didn't feel like I had to compensate for anything, because I had nothing to compensate for. My dad would talk me down publicly, make unfully degrading jokes about me, and sometimes even yell and call me derogatory names. It was as clear as day that my dad disliked me, and I was constantly feeling drained every evening after work. As if the work bullying wasn't enough, my dad and I argued a lot at home. He wanted to completely redesign the house, and I was not having it. I saw his intentions as an attempt to wipe out all of my mom's memories. We got into lots of fights, and one of those fights, he punched me in the face. His wife was shocked and rushed to get me ice. He drove away after that, probably to one of his numerous mistresses. That day was the day my stepmother and I got acquainted. Before that day, I just said hello and walked past her. I found out she used to be a model, but my dad wanted her all to himself, so she gave up her career as a model. It occurred to me that day just how pretty she was, and I felt bad for her. My dad had married the youngie that he'd always wanted, but he was still cheating on her anyway. One day I spoke to my cousin, who also worked in the company, and he advised me to move out of the mansion. Since you can't keep him out of the house, you may want to give it up entirely. It was hard to agree with him. I didn't want to leave the house because it was one of the things that reminded me of my mother and represented her power and grace. I agreed eventually, but I decided I was going to teach my dad a lesson first, and I knew just how to get back at him. I was going to sleep with his wife. That would definitely destabilize him. My dad was already getting old and didn't look as good as he did years ago when he married my mom. I knew that seeing that I could take his woman would rattle him and confirm his fears about me. My stepmom was clearly lonely since my dad was both a workaholic and a womanizer. He barely had any time for her, so I decided to take advantage of that. I would buy her flowers on my way from work. I made her pasta using the recipe that my mom had taught me, and she loved it. In no time, she fell for me. We started sneaking around the house. My dad was so self-centered that he couldn't see what was happening right under his nose. Even some of the staff knew what was going on, because they had caught my stepmom and me in intimate positions many times. My dad thought his wife was a naive little woman, so he didn't even suspect that she could ever do that to him. When I was ready for him to find out, I made one of the staff call him at the exact time I was with his wife in their bedroom and tell him that there was an emergency. It wasn't the usual time he'd return, so his wife wasn't worried at all. We were all comfortable and cozy in the bedroom when my dad walked in. Yes, he was shocked and he tried to attack me, but I dodged his punches and left. He told his wife to leave, but I insisted that she was staying. The smart little opportunist did not leave. She stayed and dared him to do whatever. I'm not going to lie, seeing her switch that way and move swiftly from my dad to me terrified me too. I decided 2 months later I was going to move out of the mansion. My dad returned to his lifestyle of bringing several different women over to the house. I continued my relationship with my stepmom and was able to get her back into modeling. She eventually left me for another richer, older dude, but I wasn't mad about that at all. I noticed when we started talking that she just wanted money. Like my dad, she grew up poor, and survival was all that she knew. It still amazes me how my dad really just married himself. I wasn't going to pursue an exclusive relationship with her anyway, so I wished her well. The important thing was how she unwittingly helped me get revenge against my dad. Well, I gotta say, that was certainly a power move. You really want to get back at a guy, stealing their woman would probably be a pretty good way. I don't think there's much greater a way of saying, I don't respect you or I don't like you, than making sure that they intentionally witnessed you shacking up with their partner. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another crazy revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.